But today we're going to talk about something different because Sarita really wanted to share with us the mechanism of how we create our reality and really how we get to that 0 point as well. And she's very skilled in this. So really, Sarita, I'll turn it over to you now to share all that you have around this subject, because it's so vital right now with the energies we have moving into all this Aries energy, the Aries equinox, which is exceptional this year, for a whole new beginning, the biggest beginning humanity has probably ever had in terms of a launch back into our sovereignty, our connection, and really discovering who we truly are and shedding the old skin. And so I think there's nobody better to share some of these techniques with us than Sarita. So perfectly timed. Off you go, Sarita.
Thank you, Pam, and it's lovely to be here. Okay, so what I wanted to do today was explain the mechanism of neutrality in reality creation. And I think this is really important because you've been saying, and so have many people, stay neutral, whatever you do, because this is only the beginning of quite a lot of, let's say, darkness and unpleasant chaos and things coming to the surface to be excavated and cleared. And I think for a lot of people it's really hard, and they understand that they shouldn't get sucked into it. And what I wanted to do today was really explain why and what it really, how neutrality really does affect change. And for me, neutrality dissolves reality. It actually collapses reality into a 0 point portal where something entirely new that has never gone before can be created. But in order to understand that, one has to know how reality is actually created. So that's what I wanted to explain, and it's kind of complicated, so I'm going to have to sort of go right back to the beginning and then explain. So please do throw pertinent questions at me if you feel you need to. So the first thing that we need to understand is how reality is created, and essentially we are living in a light frequency and information holographic field. We are not in a we haven't been dumped into a reality that we are wandering around in trying to make head or tail of or to change with our kind of material bodies. That's not how reality works at all. And I know that many of your viewers understand that reality is a reflection of your internal state, and I'm going to explain now how that is. So essentially, each one of us has around our bodies an electromagnetic biofield. And this biofield contains all of the information and crystallized information pertaining to your specific reality. So around you, Pam, you've got your biofield, and everything that you think that is happening to you in your reality is contained within that biofield. And beyond that biofield, there is literally nothing. There is the void. So you are walking around in this kind of bubble of your own creation. And the way that bubble is set up is that according to your internal state or your internal architecture, you emit an electrical impulse from the inside out, which is received by source consciousness beyond the bubble. Source consciousness picks up the request, and then the request is magnetized back towards you, so you're an electromagnetic being. And that information comes back as a wave and a particle. So it's crystallized, or it's like frequency information moving around, and it's contained in the bubble, okay? So you are the one creating your reality, and in every now moment, you update all of the information in that field. So there's no linear process, okay? This is a big one. There's no actual time. You're in every moment updating the biofield. So if you were to stand up and walk to the door of your room, in each moment you would recreate the room, changing the perspectives and how far away you were from the wall and whatever, and the light shadows and everything, and you would keep walking to it. And when you opened the door, you would only see a hall because you're updating the information in that field, okay? Now, the reason that I see a similar room to you, it looks similar, but it's coming from my perspective, is that your biofield and my biofield are sharing information on an unseen level at a really rapid pace. I'm going to explain the pace now, okay? So, well, I'll just go back. So that information that we're sharing, it's happening really, really fast, and we're not consciously aware of that information unless you're like, you know, an enlightened being or someone who's resonating at a very high frequency. So that information is going on all the time. And this is also, for example, why many of us holding a similar resonant frequency are seeing the world in a similar way. And you know, and I know, and this, I think, happened a lot in the lockdown, we would have conversations with people and it was like they were living in a completely different reality to us because they literally were. Okay, and this also explains things like why germ theory has never been proved and how terrain theory is now the upcoming sort of new science, because what's happening is there aren't viruses jumping from crystallized matter to crystallized matter. We're picking up information that it's time to detox, or that there's something in the field that you should detox from. So that's an explanation for terrain theory, and it explains a lot of other things, you know, like why how someone walks into a room and you all feel the same about them and all of this kind of thing. So our biofields are having this invisible conversation, let's say. Now, how do we emit the electrical signal? So what happens is your body has is full of portals. So many of us now know that our heart is a portal to source consciousness. It is literally the heart of the cosmos. I mean, it's the same doorway. But we also have portals in our energy centers. All of our cells are portals. All of the pores of our skin are portals. Our eyes, our ears, our nostrils, they're all portals, okay? So what's happening is you've got an idea of what you want and an emotional charge, okay? So the emotion is the thing that pushes the idea out. And what happens is that there's a pulse where your idea with the electrical charge pulses out of all of your portals to source consciousness, shares the idea with source consciousness, and then pulls back light frequency and information into your biofield and into your body. And the parts of you that are particles crystallize into matter. So a crystal, we know, contains denser light frequency and information. And in fact, I think I told you this in an email, I had an out-of-body experience not long ago, and I was shown that every single cell, every single organ, every single thing in our entire reality has its own biofield around it, okay? So everything in our reality is doing this because everything in our reality has consciousness from a shamanic level. Even inanimate objects have consciousness. We're beginning to learn that trees have consciousness, and that's kind of now a kind of known thing. But did you know that your laptop has consciousness, and your desk has consciousness, and your car has consciousness? So everything has these fields around them. So what's happening is we're working at this pulse where we're connecting to source consciousness and calling back, crystallizing into form into our field, our reality, okay? So that's how reality is created. And we have these ideas about what we want, conscious ideas. So for example, we might say that we don't consciously agree with war. So why am I seeing war in my biofield? But your conscious mind and your unconscious mind are part of this process. And your conscious mind is a very small computer compared to the massive supercomputer of your unconscious, which of course, you know, regulates your blood flow and all the things that are going on in your body and loads of other things. And what happens is that our unconscious gets programmed when we are little. And humans are in a hypnagogic state for the first 7 years of their life. So they're very susceptible to programming. So this might be the beliefs of your parents or your teacher or something you see on the news, or, you know, we get programmed essentially. And those programs get pushed very deeply into the big supercomputer of our unconscious. So even though you don't consciously want war in your biofield, unconsciously, you may be running many, many programs that you are unaware of. And because this is a bigger supercomputer, it has more momentum to push out that pulse. It's just a bigger momentum of energy, let's say. So it's really important to look at the shadow if we want to consciously create something out there as opposed to unconsciously create it. And I was thinking about this earlier, you know, so the reason I mentioned war is because it's the thing that just came up this month, you know, after the Epstein files. You know, it's a lot for people to take on board. And it's even harder for people to take responsibility for something like that, because our conscious minds are kind of screaming at us, I would never agree with that in any way, you know, and you, Pam, ask people, you know, don't engage, get neutral. And that's absolutely what we should be doing. But neutrality doesn't mean not caring. This is the thing. So, and people can't help it. They kind of are, even if it's unconsciously, getting caught up in it, let's say. So consciously, you're like, you know, I don't agree with war. I just don't, on a conscious level. But when I really examine my internal shadow, I find that sometimes I'm at war with myself, for example. How many of you, you know, you and all of the listeners are at war with yourself? You know, when do you have to be right and someone else has to be wrong? When is it that you feel like you decide what's better for someone else? You know, just like the people in power decide that something that they want is better for a country. You know, when have you, or your view, you know, when have you tried to control your child because you assumed that you knew better and it would make them happy, but actually that makes you feel safe? You know, when have you put substances in your body that were harming you? If you're willing to harm yourself, it means that you are holding an internal resonant frequency match to the harm of another. So these are the kind of minuscule, nuanced things that we all have inside us, and they hide in the shadow. So we would go, I'd never condone war. And then you'll go and like have 3 glasses of wine or something when you know it's not good for you. Or, you know, we do all of these kind of things, or you'll perpetrate upon yourself, or you'll criticize someone else or yourself. So all of these things are actually just playing out in bigger ways, let's say, on the world stage of your biofield. So it's really important that we understand that nothing can be perceived as out there that we are not holding a resonant frequency match to. And we need to really look at our shadows, like, you know, what are we actually permissioning? And the stuff that we're seeing playing out here at the moment is a victim, perpetrator, rescuer type of consciousness. And your internal state and the constant projections of your reality doesn't mind whether you're pushing out fear as the momentum or joy. It's irrelevant to your, it's pushing out what is the biggest thing, or the thing that the biggest driving force of momentum, let's say. And the thing about things like war is they're self-perpetuating cycles that create more fear, more need to be safe, more survival instinct and competition and everything. And when you're in survival mode, actually what happens is your biofield contracts so that you can't see your out there much. Your ability to be empathic or compassionate and neutral is just shot. It's shot. So this is why you see people who are very ill, for example, or in a highly nervous state are very self-centered because they're just trying to survive. They don't have the time or the energy to open their awareness, let's say. So the more you're willing to consider the shadow and take responsibility for the out there, in fact, what happens is your biofield expands and you have more of the visible light spectrum available to you to see even more of what's going on. And then that becomes an upward perpetuating cycle of awareness, let's say. So the best thing that we can do if we are seeing a war out there is to become neutral. And the only way to become neutral is to heal the internal shadow of the war inside. And you'll know if you've got something to heal because the out there will trigger you. So in other words, you won't be able to be neutral. And so what you're doing is you're having this is what you talk about, Pam, you're having a reactive response. So what you're doing is it's not that you're just energizing it or permissioning that war, you are part of creating it. Because if you have any type of need to control all of the things I've just mentioned, and that is what you're pulsing out there with a fear of momentum, you are actually part of the war that consciously you don't agree with.
Yeah,
you're literally in the act of that creation. Yeah. So I just really wanted to explain that because I think people, even though they kind of know this, they don't really get how the process works. It's absolutely fundamental to understand that. So, are there any questions so far, Pam?
No, I really hear you. And I've often said, actually, we have to take collective responsibility in creating this, because if we're seeing it out there, we must have played a part in it at whatever level. So yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah,
and we still are playing a part in it. This is the thing. So like if you decide you're watching the news, or even if you watch, let's say, horror movies and you indulge in adrenaline hits, like what is that projecting out there? It's not like peace, is it? So, and I think all of us are a bit addicted to adrenaline because we've been kind of programmed that way. So that's the mechanism of creation. So once you clear the shadow, you can then look at something. So you could look at a disease, your relationship with someone, war, the Epstein files, whatever. You begin to look at it with neutrality. And so what happens in the mechanism of reality is when the pulse comes through, you're not coming from what was gone before. You are coming from, if you like, an empty vessel of infinite potential. And so as you emit the signal, always emitting the signal, that never stops, you then, in the void, have infinite choice to bring something forth that's completely new. And what also happens is you speed up the reality process of something new because you're not bound to the linearity of the shadow.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So we could just immediately. And I know that there are many people now, and I sort of feel like I'm one of them really. I'm having a really great life I know that lots of people aren't, and things are falling apart, and there's distortions and there's stuff, and I've got tons of shadow. I've had a really tricky month, but on the whole, I feel like, because I do a lot of work on the shadow, and the people I work with do as well, we're beginning to be able to create realities that have never been created before. And I think this is pertinent and important because we are being asked, if you like, to ascend into a higher level of reality that we don't know. We don't know it. So I feel like we don't want to bring forth anything that has gone before. Anything. We've got to sit on that precipice of the 0 point and jump into the complete unknown, which is the void, and then make a choice that then comes back. And when you're neutral, not only do you get to choose something completely different, but your biofield is having this invisible conversation with the biofields of everyone and everything else, because we are a collective empathic species. But there's another completely amazing thing that happens when you engage in neutrality. And that is what you engage in neutrality with. So let's say you're having a complicated relationship with one of your family members, okay? And you do all the work and you heal the shadow. And suddenly you're in space with them, but you've hit neutrality. What happens is when you become neutral, you hold the thing, so the difficult relationship, let's say, in a container where it is allowed to be exactly what it is. So in other words, you as neutral have no attachment to the outcome. You have no projection that you're putting into it. You're not being hit by anything. You can witness what's going on with absolute impeccability. So in other words, you become completely present. What does presence do? It collapses time. Okay, so we've let go of the linearity even more. But also what presence does is, when you hold something in presence, it heals. Because if you hold something exactly as it is, and you don't inject or project or hold any separation in that, so in other words, so the attachment is a separation, the idea of it or the judgment is a separation. What happens is all of the separation which we find in difficult relationships, disease is caused by separation consciousness, war is separation consciousness, the elites, the battle between good and evil, all of the polarity here on this planet is held by us in separation consciousness. And when we are absolutely neutral, we become this container and we hold something exactly as it is. We don't hold the separation idea. And the thing inside the container becomes unified again. It becomes perfection. And that's because the container that we're holding emulates the creator. Creator consciousness is a container for creation. The creator, I'm just making an assumption here, but the creator has no, it has no attachment to what you create. It doesn't decide that what you're creating is good or bad or anything in between. It allows creation to create, and it holds all of it, knowing that all of it is one thing. It's oneness. And many people have heard this thing, we're moving from 3D to 5D. And the fifth dimension, if that's what you want to call it, is unity consciousness. It's a heart-centered consciousness where everyone realizes that we are one thing. So as you hold something, emulating the emulating the creator as the container, because you've become neutral, you offer that thing the potentiality to become whole again. And that is what is needed right now, and what is the most helpful thing that most of us can do at this time, in my opinion. And I was talking about this with you earlier. David Hawkins wrote this book called Power versus Force.
Great book.
And yeah, it's amazing. That's one of my favorites, actually. And what he did was, he was a scientist and a mystic and a very enlightened man, actually. And he discovered that he could muscle test thousands of people from all different cultures and ages and everything all over the world, and ask them questions to ascertain truth. And through that, he created a map of consciousness. And the map went from 0 to 1,000. So 0 to 30 is like shame. Then you've got things like, anger, grief, apathy, pride. And at 200, you hit courage. From 200 to 1,000, 1,000 being enlightenment, you have all these other amazing things. But the thing of, so the frequency, so courage is at 200, and the frequency above courage is neutrality. So people think neutrality is like the absence of something. It's not. It's a higher frequency than courage. And the one above neutrality is willingness. And what he also discovered is that everything below 200 is a self-perpetuating downward spiral into negativity. But once you reach courage, your frequency starts becoming an upwards momentum. Okay. And he also discovered that 85% of humanity at the time of the creation of his book, which I think was about 20 years ago, was below, so 85% of humanity was below 85%. Sorry, 85% of humanity was below 200. So they were all in shame, fear, apathy, grief, all of that kind of stuff. But 15% of humanity were on the scale between 200 and 1,000. I think there were 12 avatars at 1,000 and various people at different amounts. And one avatar at 1,000 could counterbalance something like 80 million people who were lower than 200. And let me tell you, for the purposes of this video, that one person resonating at the frequency of neutrality, which is 250, between 250 and 310, counterbalances 90,000 people. So each one of us, if we could hit neutrality, would offset 90,000 people. And in fact, when he, at the time of the writing of his book, for the first time ever, humanity had tipped as an overall into above the 200. So it had tipped to 207. I don't know what it is now, okay, because I would have to go muscle test all different people to get an accurate reading. But we went over the 200. And I think that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing this courage that is emerging. There's this kind of courage to, in my opinion, look at the horror of the shadow that we created. Yeah. We created it. So we've got this courage to now look. And we've got 15% of people holding everybody else up, and keeping the momentum going. And so neutrality is between 250 and 310. And I think if we can hold neutrality for long enough, we're then going to move into willingness. And neutrality is important because if you can look at war or someone fighting you or a difficult relationship or the disease that you're unconsciously choosing, if you can look at those things with neutrality, what neutrality does is it implies that freedom of choice is paramount. That's the thing, because you've done all the shadow work to get the freedom to choose the next thing that you're pulling into your field. And if you understand that freedom, personal sovereignty, is paramount, you cannot be controlled.
Yes.
And if you can't be controlled, you can't be influenced by any of the so-called perceptions out there, whether they're the perceptions of your loved ones or the elites or the bankers or, you know, whatever it is. You can't be controlled because you understand who you are, that your freedom, that your personal sovereignty is the most important thing. And once you hit like 250, 310, you can't go backwards. And I'm not saying that we have to hold that the whole time, because your personal resonant frequency is always fluctuating in any given moment. And obviously we do get triggered and, you know, we can't always maintain neutrality. But if we are striving for neutrality and we can hold that for long enough through this difficult and challenging period where all of this actually just horrible stuff is coming up, if we can truly hold that neutrality, we move into willingness. And willingness is the beginning of change. And so I feel like when I look at, you know, most of the people I work with, my clients, when I can look at the comments on your YouTube channel or consider the people in my field, I think most of us are at this phase of having to practice neutrality. It'd be great if we were all like at 450 and being, you know, joy and compassion. And we do have those frequencies. We are moving in those frequencies. But I think that for most of us, I think this is the phase we're in. And that's why I wanted to share this information, to show that neutrality is not some kind of, you know, look away thing, or that reality creation is not some hopeful thing that happens out there. It's that we have to take ultimate responsibility in each moment for the creation that we are upholding. And I had a download, it was a few years ago now, but I saw that, so obviously we're in a kind of inverted matrix at the moment. And I call it the inverted matrix because there's like a frequency bandwidth where everything is just upside down. You know, it's a hot mess. And I really saw that those of us who are aware of this are creating a new web of light around the earth.
Yeah.
And that biofield, we're always connected in that biofield to the sun. So, and the sun is a portal to the cosmos, and we're always connected to the earth. So those of us that are waking up and doing the internal work and we're aware of what's going on, we need to stay grounded in the earth, connected to the cosmos and the stars, and understand that the connection that we have is through, we're creating the web through our heart centers, which is this portal. And if we can hold neutrality in this web, it offers the 90,000 or more if you're a higher frequency, and all of the people around us through that invisible conversation, the option to collapse back into that neutrality. And remember that we've been in polarity. You know, the walking, think of the figure of 8, walking the 8, dark to light, you know, hot to cold. We're in this kind of polarity and learning who we are through all of the choices that we get in between. But when you collapse those states into becoming the absolute container, the container effect, if we can all hold the container effect, everything in our field gets the option to realize itself as part of the oneness of the container.
Yeah, it's really helpful, actually. It's really helpful. And for any of you out there who don't know the book Power versus Force and the Map of Consciousness, which is quite well known, you can easily find the Map of Consciousness on the internet, and it's really worth looking at. Because, yeah, as you say, Sarita, it's incredible. You know, tiny numbers of people, like kind of 1% of the overall population, can affect millions and millions of people at lower levels. because that effect of downward causation, higher frequency always affects lower rather than lower affecting a higher, is so incredibly powerful. So, you know, what you've shared is really practically useful. And it's interesting. I was just talking to somebody last night because I'm aware that there's several people I'm aware of or I know personally. I've got a good friend, and also I know Dr. Jude Caravan, who's a cosmologist, and Dr. Joe Dispenza can do this too. There are various people who are very psychically tuned in. You may be able to do it, but when you've got a very focused intention that you're creating something, those people can actually see an architecture of light beginning to emerge in the field, literally like lines on an architectural drawing in light. And if that person continues to hold that intention, it gets stronger. It almost is kind of building the house. But if that person has a moment of thinking, oh, I'm a loser, this is never going to work out for you, the whole light structure collapses. So we are literally creating with light in that way.
Yeah, you are. So when you go into when the pulse goes out into source consciousness, what you're doing is you're sending a signal to the plasma, and the plasma, it kind of gathers and collects.
Yeah.
And and then what happens is, which is amazing, it creates its own biofield.
Yeah.
And then you pull that biofield and it gets slower and slower and denser and denser. Obviously, it's happening fast as it collapses into your field, the field of your reality. But you see, this is the thing. I think people don't realize how important this biofield is. I mean, it's very hard to get your head around the fact that you're in a field and there's nothing beyond that out of your window is nothing really apart from what you've created there. But once you can grasp that, you begin to understand it's all a reflection of your internal state. So really the calling is to look at everything in your field. Is your field serving you and humanity, or is there something in your field that isn't? Are you being triggered? Go and look in your body to find the answer, because the answers are in here, because we are earthling and cosmic beings also. And I've had this conversation with you before. We're not going out there to ascend into fifth dimension. We're taking our bodies and our biofields with us.
Yeah.
And eventually I think all of those biofields will just become lighter and faster, essentially, as we elevate in consciousness. And we'll still be in them.
Yes, and that's the difference, isn't it? That we are taking our physicality with us. We're like antennae between heaven and earth. And, you know, I so often say this is an inside job. You know,
yes,
you live from the inside out rather than the outside in that we've been sort of trained to do. And it's interesting you're referring to the web of light, Sarita, because so many people report back. You know, I started this idea of a free 15-minute meditation every night. And I think thousands of people, there's no tech, no Zoom, but thousands of people all over the world are doing that. And so many people report back this web of light that every time they tune in, the next evening or the next week or the next month, it's got stronger and brighter and bigger. And we are literally sitting at home on our sofas, creating that from the invisible to shift the whole field. Literally for free, creating from the invisible to shift the entire field. I mean,
and it's literally is a web. Think of like string theory. I think that's where it's coming from. And I think the web is it's anchoring in the higher frequencies, essentially.
Yes.
So it's like you've got the inverted matrix web, and then you've got this new web around it. And then it's just really a matter of unplugging yourself, the electromagnetic aspect of you, and plugging in to this field where it's easier to have that self-sustaining upward momentum of higher and higher frequencies.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what's happening right now. I mean, there's surges of new light codes coming in. There are going to be some really big surges of energy coming in late March, early April. Really super powerful to kind of help us and boost all of this. But I think that's absolutely what's happening. We're building a stronger and stronger web of light, and the rest is just collapsing because it wasn't birthed from the frequency of love, so there isn't any energy left to sustain it. And it's energy, it's physics. That's why it's going to collapse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's even like what, like David Hawkins. It's a perpetual spiral downwards into annihilation, essentially.
Yeah.
Essentially, annihilation is at zero, isn't it?
Yes.
So, and it can't self-sustain, because we are, in fact, the lemniscate flow of infinity.
Yeah.
So we are self-perpetuating energy momentum of light. I don't really know what we are. So it's tapping into that and really realizing that we are made in the image of the Creator. Yeah. And we get to have this multi-sensory experience where we are fractalized aspects of source consciousness. But at the level of neutrality, we become connected to the unified aspect of source consciousness. So it becomes integrated into the field of our physical reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really are, I think, I've called us the bridge generation, because I really think we are, we are the bridge builders for this much more multidimensional experience that we're all moving into. But we've had all of our past in this life, certainly in many other lives, of the density and the contraction and the 3D-ness and the polarity and the judgment. And that you're so right, Sarita, every time that we make a personal judgment on ourselves or someone else, we're feeding that war frequency.
No, this is the whole thing, and I just had like this whole thing going on in my jaw. I'll just tell you this quickly. So, I had like poison coming out of my bone, and I'd had it for a while, and then I just started to get really ill, and I think it was precipitated by everything that's going on. And when I went right into my body, into the bone, I found that what I was holding in here, just where I project my speech, it had actually come from when I was 12, and I had contempt for my stepfather. Okay. And, poor guy. Anyway, we ended up friends and everything, but I'd been holding this contempt, from childhood. And when I really went into this contempt, so I'd had this contempt for a masculine father figure. And when I started to really trace, and it was in the structure of my being, in the bone of who I was. When I really traced it back, I was like, wow, am I holding contempt for paternal figures? How does that feed patriarchy and the contempt that patriarchy has for that? And I realized I'd been holding this victim consciousness, and I really had to look at that. And then, when I really went into it, I was like, wow, this is actually huge, and it's not helping reality. So I had to own it. I had to own it, go into it, heal it. And as I came out healing that, I suddenly just feel better today. I feel brighter, I feel cleaner, clearer, I feel more optimistic about the future, and I don't feel this contempt which was hidden, has kind of left me. And that's going to allow me the next time something patriarchal comes into my field to be able to be more neutral about it. And so I don't feed it.
Do you know what's fascinating is astrologically, Saturn is the father, Saturn rules the bones, Saturn rules the teeth, Saturn rules the body structure, and I don't know if this was a recent experience, but it's conjunct Neptune, which is toxicity.
That's what's been happening to me for 2 months, basically.
Yeah, and it
just peaked three weeks ago.
Yeah, well, it was exactly conjunct on February the 20th, but it's been hovering around for the last year or so. But also, if there was anything involved in that to do with drink or drugs or addiction or anything.
Yeah, so he was an alcoholic. So there you go. But the thing is, we are Earth children, and we are, as you always say, I can't believe you. Well, of course I can believe it, but of course we're completely affected by the macrocosms that are going on.
Yes.
And we've got to let go. I was like, before I came on here, I was like, oh, shall I share? And then I'm like, I'm not going to be ashamed of how I used to feel when I was little. And, I'm going to share where I am, what's going on in my body. And the thing is, everyone I'm talking to is going through it right now. Even you mentioned it in your video, I think it was a few weeks ago, your body was telling you to change.
Yeah.
And so you listen to it, and your body is part of the body of Gaia.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautifully said. So, yeah, super healthy. Isn't that interesting about your teeth and your father, and that, you know, you can't make this stuff up, can you? And the drink, you know, Neptune. But,
Yeah.
you know, and the fact it's dissolving right now, because Neptune is also dissolution. That's happening right now when they're conjunct. And this is at the point of pure potentiality to open up your choices from having.
Yeah, so, yeah, because neutrality is a dissolution of reality.
Exactly. It's just perfect. I mean, what you've been describing all through this, Sarita, is really the Saturn Neptune, because Saturn is 3D reality and the old structures and the patriarchy and all of that. And Neptune is dissolving it right now. That's why everything is cracking and appearing, and all the darkness is appearing, in order for us to build a more loving world that we're not going to build on rotten foundations. It's got to emerge. So whether it's within our body, in our own programming, you know, from childhood or whatever, whether it's in the world structures, it's the same. It's just fractalized. It's the same thing.
Exactly. It's from macro to micro and back again. And the thing is, I think we can't underestimate how important each of us is in this process.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Because you can't complete a jigsaw even without the smallest piece. Everyone has a special role to play in this, even if you think you don't. Your very state of being is a contribution. Your state of being is a contribution. And so anything we can do in any small day-to-day kind way, helping neighbors, etc., or, you know, really clearing out our own vessel, as Sarita's described so beautifully, all of that is contributing to this web of light, because we are moving at speed this year. I mean, the year of the fire horse, once we hit that Aries equinox, if you think it's been fast already, I mean, that's really go time. But it's like humanity rising into its sovereignty, its empowerment, its inner authority in a way we've never seen on such a widespread scale before. So there will be a lot of revolution on the street, but it will just be a lot of people internally disengaging from the system and saying, enough, I'm no longer going to be part of this. So, and the empowerment you've described is such a great kind of practical way to deal with our own internal processes as well. So it's been really helpful, Sarita.
Thank you for letting me share that, Pam.
No, delighted. And anything else you'd like to share, Sarita, before we close?
I can't think of anything. Just keep going, everybody, and don't give up. And we're really getting somewhere now. I mean, just talking about time, it feels like time keeps collapsing here and there. So we must be hitting 0 point moments of neutrality. And, you know, pat yourself on the back every time you're able to actually be neutral. You're affecting 90,000 people.
Yeah, absolutely. Even just for those few moments, absolutely. Yeah. And what's, you know, fascinating again, Saturn, Neptune, Saturn is linear time, and Neptune is dissolving that, which is why we're getting these time warps of time lasting forever, or no time at all, or you've just driven along a piece of road and you seem to be driving along the same piece of road. Again, you know, these time slippages we're starting to experience. And that's a sign that we're moving into multidimensionality. And I think the momentum of love in the world is now becoming palpable. I think there's so many of us connecting across the world saying, you know, no, we are going to build a more loving world. And it's really palpable, that kind of momentum. It's really powerful. And again, we're doing it all for free, and we're working with the invisible.
We absolutely are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarita, for all of that and your time. And I'll put your website details below. And I loved my week with Sarita, and I can't wait to start the training at the beginning of April. And
it's exciting.
I highly recommend it. But I think you're getting pretty heavily booked now, aren't you? So
we're pretty. We've got things happening for 2027.
Okay. Well, I'm sure this video will help.
Oh well, actually, there's an online shamanic beginners training for October this year. That's still got space. So there you go.
Highly recommend. Thank you so much, Sarita.
Thank you, Pam.
Much love and love to everybody out there. Have a wonderful rest of day wherever you are. Bye for now.
Love. Bye.